do that. It's 7:32. So calling the meeting to order at 7:32 on January 20th. As those attending here have noted, we're back to temporarily doing this all virtual of the Omicron variants. Just want to protect the health and well-being of all residents and the village staff. And we're hopefully going to go back to in-person/hybrid, whoever wants to come in to these meetings virtually as soon as the numbers come down again. So bear with us. I think most of us really enjoy the in-person, and we hope we're going to get there again. I hope Keith is on. I don't know if he's, do you recognize his phone number?
Yeah, yes. So let's have Keith. I'm asking Keith to unmute right now.
Okay. So I'm just going to say a couple of quick things. So
okay, I'm here now.
Yep.
I'm on now.
Thanks, yep. Keith. So we're gonna turn it to you so you can provide us with some snowfall totals in our neighborhood today that led to the school closing. I'd love to get some numbers. But
that was pretty embarrassing, though, wasn't it? Especially after last night's CEC meeting. I told everyone when they woke up this morning the world would be white.
Yeah.
But when I miss a forecast that has snow in it, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Most of the snow was in southern Maryland, St. Mary's and Charles counties. And that's where most of the snow has been this winter, and they can keep it there. Quickly, to move forward weather-wise, it looks like, the schools were canceled today, at least the in-person schools, so that the kids can't be too mad at me, but the snowplow drivers, they're mad at me, including Rolling Acres and John Hyman, who's relied on me for forecasts for years. Looking down the pipeline, I don't see any big storms, just cold through the rest of January. And that's it.
Okay. Keith, you forgot the parents of the students that are home. They're mad at you.
I apologize emphatically to the
parents. No worries. But in all seriousness,
I've already heard from a few of them, Andrew.
Yeah. I'd like to offer you some time now to speak and to say a few words on the loss of a cherished member of the community, if you have a couple of minutes, Keith.
Right, and now on a more somber note, John the barber is seriously ill, but John is still alive. It's his wife that just recently passed away. And she was a lovely, lovely lady. If anybody here in the community had the pleasure to know her, to meet her, she would accompany John every day to work. And she was so concerned about his health, she would stay with him there in the barber shop all day. She died suddenly earlier this month. And I've known John since he came here in 1998, might have known him better than anyone. And he was a very valuable part of our merchant community. And he will be missed by all that knew him. John loved the children. And every Saturday, they would come to get their haircuts. Many of them got their first haircuts there. Now, the shop is being renovated and will be occupied by a lady that is a beautician and a hairstylist. And we wish the new tenants well. And the CEC, particularly myself, will be welcoming her soon. And thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to eulogize John's wife and talk about John, a dear soul. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Okay, the next agenda item, I'll pass it on to Doug.
Yep. I just asked him to unmute, so it should be just a second here.
Good evening. At 3506 Bradley Lane, they've applied for demolition of building permit. The village issued their permit on December 9th, and this morning the contractors removed the existing house. So construction has begun on that project. 120 Quincy Street, they've applied for a permit to make some additions to the house. The county permit was issued on January 5th, and the staff is now preparing to issue the building permit for that project. At 159 Quincy Street, the homeowners submitted an application to build a new deck at the rear of the house. It appears that work is almost done, so we'll be wrapping that one up in hopefully a couple of weeks. And for the waiver that the council approved in 2020 at 7200 Summit Avenue, as of today, the applicants still have not applied for a county building permit, so that project is on hold. And that concludes my report.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Doug. Okay. Okay, go ahead. I was just doing one thing.
Thanks. I guess this is the time for resident comments. So if you want to virtually raise your hands or wave at us,
right.
I'd love to call on you. We'll start with Marty.
I ask you to unmute, so.
I've got it, and
Okay,
thank you.
perfect.
Hello, everybody. And I want to start with just a couple quick items here, but I want to tell a quick story about John the barber. When I got my dog from Afghanistan, my rescue dog from Afghanistan, she was not socialized. She was scared of other dogs. There was one afternoon I was walking her in front of the shops, and a big German Shepherd was behind me, and my dog was very nervous. And then around the corner from the Turner Street came another big dog. It was like a St. Bernard, and my dog was panicking. And I was right in front of John's shop door, and I ran in and I said, John, help me. And he rescued me and my dog and let me wait while the other two went by. So that was a kind man, just one of those moments in life that make it special to be here. And I just salute him, and his wife was lovely. And thank you for talking about him, Keith. Now, on to other topics, two topics. First, I want to thank the council for the very good meeting on Tuesday night about the election procedures. I care very much about elections in this village and in general. I spent quite a amount of time recently trying to get the John Lewis bill passed through Congress. And the meeting on Tuesday night, it was just remarkably different from previous ones, and I appreciate that so much. It was open, residents were allowed to speak freely without being cut off and interrupted. The atmosphere was respectful. We could talk about the details of the election regulations, because that's important. And again, I just want to thank you so much. It was such a difference in tone from the seemingly very critical tone about the elections at the November and December council meetings, and the pretty closed format that was at the January 6th committee meeting, where residents really couldn't talk much about specific regulations because we weren't sure what we were looking at with two different documents at that meeting. So I just want to thank you. I believe in praising people when they do things well, and the Tuesday night meeting was so helpful and so productive. Thank you so much. I hope that will be the model going forward. I did want to ask if the council, maybe Andrew, this is a question for you, was planning to vote on any of those election amendments that the community proposed. Are you planning to do a vote tonight? It might be efficient to do that to get them out of the way, but what's the plan there?
No, thank you for that question, Marty, but we've kept that, we want to keep that comment period open for a little bit longer. And then in advance of our next council meeting, individual council members will have a chance to review comments and to provide their own feedback so that we can, in our February council meeting, have a discussion and vote and finalize and pass that election plan. But I think this, given the comments that are still coming in, we don't want to move ahead yet.
Thank you for clarifying that very much. And I also have a second question, which is for Arthur. Arthur, your work on the guidelines there for committees and volunteers has been really helpful. And, I know it's a response to what Naomi and Paula Goldberg and I think Holly Worthington and I and other long-term volunteers suggested some time ago about having a volunteer manual spelling out these procedures. And it's become increasingly clear from recent experience that really is necessary. So Arthur, I commend you for putting it together. I have a question for you about process. I know you've invited comments from me and other longtime volunteers, but I think it might be very helpful. I mean, I think the document is very good, probably needs a little bit more. would you consider having an open invitation to other residents to have a Zoom meeting to discuss as a group? Because I think at this point, a lot of individuals have given you back feedback, which is great. I think you've incorporated some of it at least, maybe a lot of it. But I would really like to have a community discussion about it because we have a lot of people here who actually have been volunteers, as you know, and I would like to include them in the process. So would you consider having an open meeting to discuss the guidelines are really important. What you're doing here is really essential. It's much needed, and it's been needed for a long time, so thank you for doing it. But how about an open meeting? Can you invite other residents to do
we were
that?
going to discuss this later, but we might as well discuss it right now. The latest draft has been posted with the meeting packet tonight. And when we came to discuss it, we were going to ask for a open meeting of just the kind that you suggested. But I would like to have that opportunity to do it before the next council meeting. It's time to get this passed. And so sometime between now and next month, I look forward to scheduling an open meeting, everybody invited, just single purpose to discuss these guidelines. I have received a number of very good comments from a number of people who are here tonight and others. So I look forward to continuing that. But we do want to get this done with, as you could tell from the last meeting of the election committee, not having those guidelines really was a detriment to the conduct of how the committees operate. So we want to proceed with that as fast as possible. So sometime between now and the next meeting, next month, we will be having a meeting. We'll come up with some final drafts that we will then submit for final consideration to the council at that time. So thank you. Yes, we are proceeding.
And I would suggest that it's going to be during a week where we don't have 3 in a row.
Amen to that.
For everyone's sanity, that would be my recommendation.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Arthur.
Okay.
And Andrew, both.
Okay. Thanks, Marty. Gene.
Yeah.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you. I have a question related to an offer that I understand has been made to all municipalities in Montgomery County, all 23 of us. And 17 of the 23 have taken up that offer for free COVID tests, 2 per household, I think, which is a substantial savings for many of us. And I hope that Martin's Editions is taking it seriously. This is like a freebie that we could take. And I also want to tell you that I'm happy to help. I know other jurisdictions have done it. It's kind of modeling after the library where you step up to a table, you grab 2 and you go. And I'm happy to do that. But I would hate to see us not take up the opportunity that's being afforded to us by the county for free. And those COVID tests are expensive. I bought 2 of them from Brookfield Pharmacy, and I won't tell you what I paid for. So, please let me know what you think. I imagine you're well aware of the offer from the county, and I'm happy to help if I can. I'll sit in front of a card table out in front of the market or wherever and hand them out.
Do you want? Yeah. Do you want? Okay. So I sent an email. Thank you, Gene. I sent an email to the council today about planning this out. I've been on a couple of different calls with the county to kind of understand what they're actually asking from us. And I also had a conversation with someone you know, Jana Cole, today about how they did it in Chevy Chase View. And my initial concern with us doing it was simply just staffing and things like that. But in hearing how the county is basically saying just put them out, give them to people, there's not a lot of bureaucracy around what they're doing. It's just we get them received, and we do it. And hearing the way Chevy Chase View and others have done it is the idea of having volunteers. So, whether it be council members, that's what Chevy Chase View or something like that, sit behind a table and do it is something we could do. One thing that I did hear from Earl Stoddard today was of making sure that we also have gloves, because they don't want any kind of contamination to the tests or anything else. Which we have. We have gloves in the office, so we can also provide those as well. But
And the pharmacy is right there.
right, right. It's not a hard thing to overcome. But I just wanted to give the details that I know.
And Gene, and also presumably these are the packaged
Yes.
text, so it's not, we're not, giving out Q-tips.
No, it's
My thought is that, with the help of volunteers, maybe we can provide for a time for pickup at the village office, and then we can, for those that are not able to come to the village office for various reasons, including access and steps or whatever it is, I think council members and other volunteers would be eager to walk the streets of the village and knock on doors and distribute in that way.
one thing.
I think you could do it so much simpler than that. It's not like you have 10 billion of them. To set up a table.
I don't know how many we get.
So that's a good question, and that's.
I know Niles can answer
Yeah.
that, but my thought is you put a table out like the library does. You sit there, you hand them out. Nobody wants to climb the stairs to the office. Just set a time, 2 to 4, you're done. You're not going to have that
Right.
many that you don't want council members.
Yeah,
So,
I don't want to get too technical here.
No, it's fine.
I also want to make sure that they're being handed out. Are these only for residents of the Village of Martin's Additions?
So that's one of the questions that we spent a lot of time talking with the county about. The idea is that yes, this would just be for Village of Martin's Additions residents. However, the county is not advising us to ask IDs or to do anything. It's first come, first serve. You get 2 packets, which means you get 4 total tests. You just hand them out to people. You ask people. You just get these 2. You go to you get out of line and you're done. So the idea is
Packets. Sorry, no.
so you get
packets per
resident. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
resident, not per home.
right right exactly. Now what again, all of these technicalities. What the county is their view is just to push these out as much as possible. So they don't want to get it. They don't want to get bogged down in having people check IDs or figuring out family members. So they're saying if you show up, you get 2, you go on. But what they don't want people to do is go back in line and do all that kind of stuff. So
here's my thought.
Yes.
Just quickly, and if it's first come first serve, I'm really curious to know how many there are, because in many ways, if there are enough for this entire village, then however much easier it is, Gene, to sit there.
Mm-hmm. And so
I think we'll get dinged if people are not getting them because others grab them that don't live here. So I would rather go through a more labor-intensive effort to get that every resident and every home in this village gets these tests.
So we.
It's not going to be on you, Gene. You're not going to be walking the streets if you don't want to, or walking the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do it just so that we can guarantee everyone gets them.
Yeah. So what the
I'm not so sure that's an important point, but go ahead, Niles.
So what the county is suggesting is they will give us what they can based on their allocation. So, like for example, Chevy Chase View, I want to say got 540 tests, something like that. Don't quote me on that, Jenna. Tell me what it is. But it's something in that range, and so we would get several hundred of these tests, depending on time. Now, the other issues that the county is having, is that the contractor they're using to get their tests just got an order from the Department of Defense for 200 million tests. So there's some back order questions about when we would receive them, but we could put it in. The idea is first come, first serve, and then if we want to do it again, we would just get more first come, first serve. And what Jana and Shana and a couple of other, Julian was talking about and stuff is most of the people have been very understanding of we're just trying to get tests out. We're just trying. If you don't get one, we'll try to get more at a later date, that kind of thing. And that there hasn't been too many complaints from residents about getting it or not getting it. That's just sort of one of the other things that has been about this program. Yeah, hang on one second, Andrew.
I muted myself.
Yeah.
So my point only, Gene, is let's say we get 100. I'd say, all right, let's do that at table, because then we notify the village and say we have 100 of these tests. We're going to be out there. But if we get 400, or a number that would be equal to each home getting a test, I think it would be more equitable for us to make the rounds and drop off the tests at every home. That's all I'm saying. If it's only 100 tests or 50 tests, then I'm not going to pick winners and losers. We're going to put out a notice and say here's when volunteers will be manning a desk, and swing by and grab a test as long as they're available. I don't know what your thoughts are, Gene, on that.
Well, I think you're going to get a lot more than 50, and there are standards that Earl Stoddard, you've talked to him,
yes.
Niles. I think we're going to know, and I think they're probably counting number of households. So, but I would say don't overcomplicate this stuff. Find out what other jurisdictions are doing. I have not heard from any of my friends in all the municipalities that they are going to these lengths. They're simply announcing or making them available, come get them. And it's a model that's being used in every library throughout Montgomery County. That you don't even have to use an ID in the library. You walk in the front door, they look at you, smile sweetly, they hand you two and send you out the back door, okay? So I would hate to see Martin's Editions complicate or go beyond the requirements of the library. Just let's do the best we can to let our residents know we're here and we're providing this as a service, which is the intention.
Okay.
This is
well. Listen, we can
tax dollars, not even our tax dollars. It's only for us, our time. Anyway, so I'll say no more.
I get your point. I don't like to overcomplicate things, but we do want to service to our residents, and if there's, if street captains grab a bag and hand them out, I mean, that's a pretty efficient way to do it. But we'll get there when we get there. We'll figure it out, and we'll discuss it. I mean, again, if it's 400 tests and there are folks that are happening to come through on their commutes and stop by the supermarket and grab them, fantastic. But that might put our residents at a disadvantage. So
you know what I've heard? That the most of the people that have been the most happy about this are the senior citizens, because they have trouble getting in their car. So if you're going to really start to think about prioritizing, that's something maybe I'm not sure that you need to prioritize. But if you're going to, from the experience in other towns, I have heard that your senior citizens have really appreciated them giving first come, first serve in some way.
Yeah. Well, great. I agree. Fantastic. All right. Larry, I don't know if you're biting your nails. You seem hand is up. Thank you, Gene.
Okay.
Larry.
So Gene, thank you so much for bringing this up. I think you're fabulous for doing that. Anyway, one of the problems with having a table is that there's a lot of people that don't wear a mask and are going to get within 6 feet of each other if there's a 2-hour window that they all have to show up there to get their things. So that may not be as ideal a scenario as we want on that basis alone. And I'm looking at all the people who are here, and it seems like we've already got the solution, though. I'm more than willing to deliver to every house on Delfield Street that has requested them. And I'm sure there's a way that we can either have them notified by email or phone at the office that they want them. And I'm more than happy to deliver everything on my street. And I'm sure Katie is happy. See, Katie, willing to stick to you with some more work, right? Huh? Okay. I mean, and I think that's true with almost everybody here. And that wouldn't that be the simplest way to get it? And then there's some older people who are terrified of becoming infected. They would really love this thing that they're dropped off at their porch, okay, and they have no contact with people. Okay, anyway, that's my idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And at the end of the day, I think you pointed it out. Many of the folks that tune in here on a monthly basis are also folks that have or are volunteering right now and probably wouldn't mind helping out. So thank you, Larry. Susan Kahn.
Hi. I wish I didn't want to say my long statement, but I feel like I need to because it relates to a former meeting and feelings and thoughts that I have that are still with me. And so if you can have patience with me, if it gets too long, I could finish it at the end of the meeting and the other resident comment period.
Well, how long is it? Are we, I mean, is this a
I
half?
guess it would be
statement, or-
about 8 or 9 minutes.
Okay, well, let's do it all at once, and
Okay.
we move on.
The following is my opinion, and I thank you, Andrew, for giving me the opportunity to speak. At the last council meeting of December 16th, which was our last major large council meeting, our community witnessed a level of discourse that I hope will never be repeated. Trivial points were exaggerated with the effect of undercutting the credibility of a single person, which created an excuse to undermine the election plan of the committee that he led. Misinterpretations were stated by council members with vehemence, but simply lacked foundation. Some council members and residents assumed their colleagues' assertions were fact and simply repeated those unfounded allegations. It was almost like talking points had been written ahead of time, promising new and startling information that was even described by one council member as stunning. What was this stunning information? First, an editing detail that amounted to one sentence that the chair readily admitted should have been added to the document. But the actual vote taken in committee did not require the sentence to be added. In fact, the vote taken referred to removing language about curing unsigned ballots, and no language mentioning unsigned ballots existed in the section. Sure, the document could have been strengthened, but the utterly inaccurate representation that the chair had put something new into the document was simply wrong. Despite the words of the council member that a portion of writing, quote, does seem to have inserted its way back into this document, unquote, that section of the plan had not been removed and nothing had been inserted back. The upshot, the talking point, was based on a misrepresentation of what had happened in the committee and what was in the document. Second piece of stunning information, there was a need for a vote on a 30-minute grace period, which the chair immediately acknowledged when asked about it, and had this also in his introduction to discuss when he was to introduce the election plan. He never got to his introduction as the fervor of the crowd took over. The gotcha moment of the crowd, the fervor of the council, so excited that they had found one tiny piece of information in the election plan, propelled them into agitated repetition ad nauseum of the ongoing unfounded assertion that the entire election plan had not been voted on because someone noted this one tiny detail. The big misrepresentation was that the election plan was not voted on. For over an hour, we heard dismissive comments that culminated in the unfair assertion that this was not a committee plan, but might just be the plan of a single person. In fact, in over 10 hours of election committee meetings in the previous month, at least 12 votes were taken on the election plan in question, with 3 of them being 4-1 and 9 of them being unanimous 5-0 votes. One of those 5-0 unanimous votes was on the election plan as a whole. A subsequent meeting held at the request of the council had votes on 2 amendments. There was no reason whatsoever to vote again on the plan as a whole, despite the talking point to the contrary. As you can imagine, serious differences of views on the election plan, which are passionately held and reasonable from each person's perspective, made it difficult to get consensus at the committee level. That there were 9 unanimous 5-0 votes was a stunning achievement by the chair and all of the committee members. That there were 3 4-1 votes was a stunning achievement by the chair and all of the committee members. The election plan represented a tremendous amount of work and admirable compromise of committee members and represented without question the work of the committee. Yet the exaggerated focus on the single issue of the 30-minute grace period obscured the focus on this plan as a whole and facilitated the effort to strike down any consideration of introducing the election plan at the council meeting. People railed against these minute, exaggerated details and the unsupported rationale that the plan was not voted on. In fact, the distraction about the 30-minute grace period and the editing detail with the backdrop of the assertion that the plan hadn't been voted on led to a fascinating fork in the road at the meeting. The council chair recommended the plan go back to the committee to be voted on. If the pretext was correct, that the plan or the 30-minute detail hadn't been voted on, then it should just return to committee to get an official blessing. But a couple of council and committee members announced in non sequitur fashion that they'd move in another direction. They took the minute details like a football and ran right out of the stadium. Despite their supposed concern for ensuring that the plan had precisely what was passed in the committee in it, they advocated during the December 16th meeting to drop the plan entirely and adopt instead the 2021 election plan. Who would have thought they'd use these minute, exaggerated details to argue for abandoning the entire work of a representative body of residents? So I suppose it should not be that surprising that although people had the impression that the newly constituted election committee was being charged with adjusting the two minor details discussed at the council meeting, the new chair chose to gut whole sections of the election plan without even indicating that substantial portions were taken out in the public draft that was posted online for the January 6th meeting. But to return to the December 16th council meeting, to rectify what had gone wrong, I thought after the meeting that sending out minutes of 2 election committee meetings to council members would have cleared up the misrepresentation of the plan not being voted on. It is important that the current election committee post all of the minutes of previous meetings as soon as possible on the website. After the council saw these minutes, which provided evidence of many votes being taken, it would have been sensible to issue an apology immediately. No apology from the council as a whole was issued. In a letter I wrote to the council, I also explained why 2 specific allegations by a council member stated at committee and council meetings were clear misinterpretations of conversations. The letter I received from a council member in reply had no defense whatsoever of the unfounded allegations, but rather reverted to the idea that people just need to be able to accept criticism, and no one should be wrapped in a cloak of unassailability. Clearly, it's important to the council that people should be open to criticism, and I do not mean to paint all of the council with broad brushstrokes. You are each distinct. One of you is the utmost voice of reason and accountability. Another of you simply resists criticism but asserts the important value it has for other people. And another of you can be reliably counted on for an occasional misinterpretation of a conversation and an accusation of ill intent. At this point, I am just hoping to move on. What I hope council members and all of us will consider at some point, whether a month or year or 3 years from now, is, do you think that anything could have been done differently to have improved the outcome of the December 16th council meeting? Why do you think one of the remaining members of the original election committee chose to rescind his support for the January 6th election plan? He supports the residents' amendments to that plan now, as many of us do. At the December 16th council meeting, why do you think the chair of the election committee and a longtime village volunteer and committee member chose to resign? They ended up leaving behind the unfounded allegations and unfair misrepresentations of the election plan and their work on it that were made at the meeting. Council members, please avoid accepting unthinkingly the assessments of your colleagues and keep an open mind toward resident volunteers who you may not know as well. Otherwise, it appears that a small group of residents have the ear of the council and that a double standard could exist for scrutiny on proposals brought before the council. I also encouraged you to engage in direct communication with residents serving on committees. This is preferable to surprising residents with vehement misrepresentations in public forums. It would be helpful to be critical about your line of reasoning about the consequence of a simple observation. An edit may need to be added to a document. This need not involve questioning the entire legitimacy of the document and credibility of the writer. But if the ground is already carefully laid for the ill intent of the writer through a strategic character assassination campaign, it's a heavy lift for residents to extricate themselves from the web of unsubstantiated allegations. Who would want to be cast in such a crucible-like scenario? And who would want to watch someone who does excellent, honest work targeted in this way? Criticism is fair, but exaggerated, unfounded allegations tear a community apart, and the injustice and humiliation of being targeted in this way is not lost on others watching. It would be a shame to normalize this way of interacting with resident volunteers on committees. I would like to take away something positive from all that was done by the BMA Election Committee during November and December. The amendments to the current election plan represent some of that work. I also value the work of the former chair and thoughtful residents. When the January 6th plan was presented without clarifying in the public draft that was posted online that substantial portions had been changed, I very much appreciated that the former committee chair pointed out 9 major items that had been changed. I very much appreciated that Marty Langland noted that the word "and" changed to "or" in the draft, an editing change that was not discussed and that could eliminate mailings of election materials to homes. I appreciate the dozens of hours that residents have put into writing the amendments that will improve this election plan. Without attentive residents, we cannot have an election plan that represents our views and our dedication to ensuring that our neighbors' votes are counted in a fair election. I encourage you to pass the amendments proposed by residents without delay to strengthen the plan before you. The plan already represents a massive compromise in agreeing to not count the ballots when envelopes are unsigned, even though it's easy to trace envelopes back to a voter with their control numbers. I would not accept that, but it's in the plan. So if you're being asked to compromise more on disenfranchising voters, be aware that the plan already disenfranchises some. When you ultimately vote for it, the election plan will have your blessing. Be cognizant that if any voters' ballots are torn up or not accepted, that policies you allow in this plan may contribute to that. I encourage you to create an election plan that gives a fair and equal chance to all candidates. I encourage you to focus on enfranchising your neighbors and making sure their votes matter as much as each of them matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. John?
I'm asking him to unmute now, so.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a little different subject. I'm wondering where we are in terms of Thornapple, perhaps street bumps on Thornapple and perhaps sidewalk. Has any progress been made on that aspect? Or is just not to ask these questions?
Oh, no worries. We have a forum next week, Niles?
Yeah, so next Thursday we're going to solicit resident input on the potential addition of on Thornapple Street, just gauging from all kinds of residents who will be a specific meeting for that purpose. Also, we myself and a couple of council members met with a traffic group who's our contractor to do the overall improvements on village streets, and so we will be incorporating some of their feedback in what we talk about at that meeting as well. So we are sort of working forward on that.
Well, thank you. I'd like to have one other comment.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, that was very enlightening of the aspect of the election turmoil that we have witnessed. But you really clarified a lot of issues with me, believe me, and I thank you for that. And I hope other members of the community realize that as well. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for listening to me. Now, okay?
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
iPad, please. And I don't know, Marty, if that's a new hand or an old hand, but we'll start with the iPad resident.
This is Tiffany Cisna. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had 2 points. One, I appreciated the council introducing the election committee's recommended 2022 plan. There was a process, a document was written in session and voted on. And I appreciate the council move that forward. I know that you guys are soliciting feedback, and as promised, I will continue to provide mine. Again, I think it's really important to note that there were committee votes and open session on legislative language, and it is what was moved forward. The second thing, and I wasn't at the community engagement committee meeting last night, but I heard that there was a vote that the committee was canceling the February event, and my understanding of authorities is that the committee might be able to vote to make that recommendation to the council, but canceling an event would be a council decision. And, I hope that the council will discuss, maybe if it's not an in-person event at La Firme, but that's not where the 5 of you are, then finding an alternative. There's a way to give a hug in the wintertime, and maybe it's a food truck or a to-go option. Even if residents aren't all comfortable gathering inside, maybe there's something that the council could do just to kind of give that, Martin's Editions winter hug. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Marty, if your hand is still up, or if it's
I'm going to ask.
hand, maybe put it away and put it up. We'll just do it that way.
Yeah, I'll just ask. Are you asking again, Marty?
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Okay, hi, thank you. It's a new hand. Couple things real quick. Initially, I put my hand up because I wanted to volunteer to distribute the COVID tests on Chestnut Street. And I do think the street captains can help with that. And we have street captains under the CEC. And that's great. I think all the captains would probably be glad to volunteer too. But then I heard Susan's presentation. And I have to say, I agree with every single thing she said. I was mostly a bystander at the November and December council meetings. And the tone was so unrelentingly negative. And the point Susan made about character assassination and taking some small detail and distorting it as if it were actually a big deal fact. And in fact, making some false statements that really were, well, whatever they were intended to do, they had the effect of discrediting and maligning somebody who I personally know to be extremely honorable. There's not a more honest person in this village than Peter Kahn. And it was extremely distressing to Natalie Welly, who I've also known for 30 years. And I want to just underscore what Susan said, because it is so important not to let unfounded statements go uncorrected on the public record, and factually incorrect statements. I speak as someone who has been targeted by the same council member for some allegations that I know to be false, and have really not had any forum in which I could respond to them. And I am just really troubled by the way that has changed the tone in our village to negativity. And by the way, people who say, wait a minute, and object and stand up and say, that's not okay, then get targeted and labeled as troublemakers, as I have been. So this is not something that just happened in November or December. Other people in this village have been targeted too, not just me, by a long shot. Holly Worthington was unfairly told, it was announced at a public meeting that she had provided misinformation to the village. That was false. She didn't say anything that was misinformative. And there have been a number of people, and it almost seems to me like kind of like mean girls in 8th grade, with rumors and innuendos and twisting things and distorting the record in such a way as to make it look like somebody did something wrong, when in fact they did not. And in many cases, they couldn't have. I mean, the things that they were accused of physically could not have been done. So not only were they untrue, but they could not possibly have been true. And I think that we really need to call that when we see it, and just not repeat it, not give it a public forum without being corrected publicly. And on that, I am asking, I kept underscoring what Susan said about asking the council to set a high standard for factuality and not allow unsubstantiated innuendos or character assassination to go unanswered or uncorrected, but to rather say that there'll be a process. We will have so-and-so meet with so-and-so to see if they can come to a meeting of the minds about the facts on things. There are many ways to do that. I mean, mediators are very helpful. And I want to just really underscore, because I'm watching those two meetings was just really upset by the negativity and the unbalanced nature of, here's a committee, the election committee came with a plan in basically less than a month. They put together a very solid, good, workable election plan. And when they came to present it in November, they were met with a blast of criticism, much of which was not to the point, we're not going to have an in-person election. So why did we spend half an hour browbeating the committee chair about how we should do that? That was pointless. And it just negative. And the positive things about it, nobody on the council stepped back and said, this is really a good plan. You see that this is all better than last year. This is really good. This is better than we've ever done it in some cases. And nobody said those praiseworthy things. People only focused on the negativity. It seems so uneven to me. And that's the kind of thing I would not like the council to do again. I would like to see more balance in review and awareness on all the council members. That when something is asserted, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And then when a committee does really solid work, the council's response needs to recognize the good work, not just focus on a few negative things and pound them into the sidewalk. End of dissertation. I want to just commend Susan Kahn for having courage to make that very clear statement. I agree with every word she said. And I thank you very much for thinking about it hard and not letting that ever happen again, because it was really harmful to a lot of people. Watching it was a moral injury in the sense of watching something that was not good, and from my perspective, not being able to do anything to stop it or fix it. It was really harmful. And I know you know that, and I appreciate you really thinking hard about how to make sure that never happens again. Thank you very, very much. I'm glad that subject is on the table.
Oh, may I say something?
Yeah, Katie, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to, well, I too would like to thank Susan for her eloquent statement. And in her statement, I might have gotten this wrong, but I think she did ask council a question. She said, is there anything we might change about that December meeting? And yes, I'll answer it. Yes, I'd love to go back in the time machine and fix it all. And I'm sorry that it resulted in 2 resignations. I reached out to both those members of the committee. I'm sorry to see what was a 5-member committee down to 3. And yes, of course, I wish things were different, and we will learn from that. So I just wanted to answer her question because she did address council members in her statement.
And just to be clear, I've made that point on multiple occasions since that meeting. We've discussed this at our special council meeting earlier this week as well. If we could go back, we'd try and do it differently. I also want to point out that one committee member agreed that there were items that hadn't been voted on. It seemed very simple. I also want to say that, when we talk about being civil in these meetings, that includes, and character assassinations is the term that's being used. It's a two-way street. When you're pointing at 3 council members, you may not have named them by name, but you're alleging intent, you're alleging certain things that you don't know them. You don't know if there was any planning and coordination. We know there's plenty of coordination on the other side to get their points, to get residents' points across, and I think it's done in a great way. And I've said this before, really helpful comments, really helpful adjustments and recommendations. But I still think it's not right to point fingers, to engage in hyperbole, and saying my facts are the facts and other people's facts aren't. Because I've listened to the recordings and I've read the minutes, and I find plenty of issues there as well. Again, the easiest thing we could have done is just accept that election plan and say there are items in there that haven't been voted on. We'll just make the ultimate decision. But I thought, maybe, given that another committee member said we didn't vote on it, and we talk about disenfranchising folks, I thought it might be smart not to disenfranchise, or the right thing to do not to disenfranchise committee members who should be voting on items. And now we're hearing that the former chair was going to mention this. Sure, maybe that's true, but there was no ill intent. There was no malign intent. And there is no gotcha moment that I'm aware of. I have not coordinated and colluded with my council members on how to go after the former chairman. I respect the former chairman. I begged him to come back and rescind his resignation. I don't think that the fact is people think everyone has an agenda in this village. And I think this goes back for years before I even moved here 10 years ago. And I think maybe it's true. I just don't see it here right now on this council. And I hope it's not the case. And I'm fighting my darndest to make sure that these council meetings are held in a way that they're equitable, that they're civil, everyone gets their turn to speak, and no one is ganged up against. And if a council member uses a certain tone, I won't be happy with it. if it's aggressive in tone, etc. But I just think there at times there are egos involved, and I get criticized plenty. I'm not going to resign for that. Okay, I'm just going to accept the fact that people do not believe in everything that I stand for, and that's the bottom line. There are resident volunteers here that are on committees, that are street captains, that are on this council, and we all have the best of intentions. And pointing fingers, I don't think is the right way to approach it. We've heard your comments, Susan. I agree with Katie. Eloquent. I've spoken. I've responded to your email. I've spoken to many folks on the committee. We had a great, I think, election committee, special election council meeting earlier in the week. We have great comments, and I know that a lot of those comments will likely be included. A lot of those changes will be in the final plan. From my point of view, I'm going to vote for them, and some I won't. But that's the process, and again, we can all agree that that meeting sucked. We can all agree it sucked. Okay, I'm going to use that language. It was horrible, and it's something that I regret very much.
Nightmarish.
Yeah. Period. Buffy. I don't know if you're Buffy, but let's go with Buffy, please.
I'm asking you to unmute, so it should be there. Okay. Perfect. Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Good evening. Before we go on, there seems to be some consensus with respect to Gene Sperling's suggestion regarding COVID materials. That is, Larry, Gene, and Andrew seem to agree that street captains could deliver the merchandise. And the reason I agree with that is on Oxford Street, for example, and Quincy, we have many people who are invalids. We have many people who are in wheelchairs. We have many people like myself with Parkinson's who find it difficult to walk. We have COVID patients who can't leave their house or are fearful. We have people in walkers, and we have people who are hospitalized. And I'm not sure, but I have seen one or two blind people in the community. I think this is an area where we could agree without any disagreement whatsoever that would benefit our community. Then returning to the arguments about the voting procedures, notwithstanding that Niall has given us good service with the roads, the garbage, the leaves, and whatnot, I think it really is a conflict of interest that the village manager get involved in the election procedures or counting or whatever, because he reports to people who control his salary and working conditions. And this has nothing to do with Niles himself, because he's a hero in my neighborhood, from the sand to the snow to the leaves to the water to everything whatsoever. It's just, given my experience in NLRB elections, the Panama Canal, and union elections under Landrum Griffin, it's best to step away. So there's no, not a shadow of doubt that there's an appearance or a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Agreed, very much agreed. I see two more hands. Larry, do you want to go again? Okay, Larry, you're up.
Yeah.
So first, there was dog barking when somebody was talking, and I endorse absolutely what that dog said. That's number one. Number two is that, Susan, that was such a clear, eloquent, and meaningful commentary that you made. And I wanted to ask Arthur, is it, this is something, approaching this very thing, people maligning each other, is this being addressed in what you're working on?
In the committee guidelines, I don't recall any language that says people should be civil and polite and stick to the facts. It kind of goes without saying. I don't think we have to put it in there.
Yeah, cool. I think this is fundamental. And as we were sitting here talking about it, I'm thinking about if people are about ready to vote on something, to malign or make accusations at that moment is something that we might be able to actually do something about, Andrew, that it's not allowed. And number two, sort of like the Washington Post, I mean, that I still get and read the paper, where you have a retraction or a correction, etc., that there be that kind of opportunity as well, where just did be provided next meeting. If somebody has made a misstatement and it's a substantial enough statement, I think the council should have a way of saying, this is a clarification of some misinformation that occurred previously. So, Arthur, I think there's a way to put this into this handbook.
Okay, it's an idea that I had not considered. I thought it kind of went without saying, but maybe we should make it explicit.
It's what's this has turned into a liberal arts government. It doesn't execute anything like the engineering departments or the medical departments. It just yaks about everything and natters.
I've been advocating for authoritarian rule here, Larry. It's just I will continue to push for this to be a 1-year assignment as king or queen of the Village of Martin's edition.
Okay.
Thank you. Good point. Arthur, did you want to say anything else?
No, I think these are things maybe to be discussed, further discussed at the sounding board, the town hall that we have on these things. So let me just add that in tonight's meeting packet, the draft committee guidelines are there. Take a look at them and be ready to comment when we have our open meeting on it.
Great.
And Andrew, this is Jeff here. I'll make it brief. And first, I just want to state, as others have, appreciating your leadership. And even though some of these discussions may prolong the meetings, I think the approach you've taken to hear all the voices and hear them until they've been exhausted, I think has also been a salve for a lot of folks to just be able to express themselves in this forum. So really, I want to share and commend and appreciate the way that you approach these things, and you're the perfect person to really lead us through to this next phase and under this newly elected council for this year. The other piece I just wanted to share, and again, I want to just commend Arthur, who truly has always been in my mind so extraordinary in terms of his leadership and detail and pulling things together. I think anyone who's looked at this document, it's exquisite really in how he shaped it. But I do want to put out, as we mentioned, I think this is a learning and a teaching moment. It may not perhaps appease Susan and others and with the hard feelings of how they resigned. We had some folks who resigned last year. But as Einstein used to say, in paraphrasing his favorite, is one of his famous quotes, was the whole idea of, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and thinking things will change. So I think we have a learning moment of things that we have happened this year with the election. I think there are some things that happened with the ordinance process last year that we learned from. Not that anything was done in perhaps bad faith, but we've learned how we could do better. And so I think taking this moment with Arthur, the baseline, that we'll have a few tweaks, a few things we can add. And I think going forward will really help perhaps move us even more forward to where we want to go. And with that said, I just want to turn it over, and thanks again.
Thank you, Jeff. I think we're done with resident comments. It sounded like, Jeff, I saw an email that you wanted to take this opportunity after written comments for a quick discussion on something that's not on the agenda, or?
This was exactly what I wanted to do.
That was it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Jeff. Okay, we're moving on to committee updates. So I don't know who has a committee update. Niles, I don't know if anyone's on the.
Sorry. Yes. So Mark Shaver had to drop off the call, but he had mentioned, as we talked about, sort of the Chevy Chase at Home sort of outreach stuff that he has done and that Arthur has done and such. And so he sent me an email about that, and that was just generally saying they're still looking at what we want to do. We have, in the newsletter last month, we put in more of an explanation of what Chevy Chase at Home does, which is what Chevy Chase at Home had talked about. So that was something that we're trying to do. So it's both their services and their events, just to sort of give more detail there. And then the other discussion point was about sidewalk snow removal, potentially. And I did, and we can talk about this later at my report, because I did put some of the information and history we talked about there in my report. So we can sort of jump to that. Keith, are you there? Oh, I have to ask him to unmute. I thought I had. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Okay, perfect. So do you want
to... just briefly here, and you can help me with part of this. Is Paul on with us, Niles?
He is not. I sent him a message, but he was not able to join, so we could just sort of...
Okay, well, we'll do this quickly. We decided in our meeting last evening to cancel the luncheon at the La Ferme because of health guidelines. If we reschedule that event for late February or March, it would be in conflict and in violation of being too close to the election rules. Therefore, we agreed not to hold it. And then the other discussion was about the different aspects of what people could get involved with doing, where we would take it upon ourselves to send out information to the community, to every resident. And I would have my block captains do that. On every street, I would do it myself, even if I have to do all of it myself, to every house, to every resident in the community. And if you'd like to expand on that, Niles, I would appreciate that, since we don't have Paul with us.
Right. So there's a discussion, the Community Engagement Committee discussed just sending out a letter about various interest groups and things like that, and doing that through either sending it out by street captains or various things like that, or potentially Constant Contact. Paul is working on the draft of what that would be, so once we get that. There was other discussions just generally about street captains, about their role and sort of what we want them to do, and updating them, because we've, one of the things with the pandemic is just making sure everybody is comfortable going to other people's doors and things like that for the welcome bag and stuff like that. And then there was a discussion about sort of communication and sort of community alerts and things like that. And so there's a discussion of text alerts, whether it be an informal thing where the street captains can communicate with each other via text, or sort of an alert system like, Alert Montgomery or something like that, at a very low level for the village. And that I would do some research on that. Or that was the recommendation of the committee, that to have me do some research on that, on how we want to best communicate in cases of emergency to our residents in a quickly and efficient manner. So that's sort of those were sort of the main things, I think. Keith, do you have anything else?
That pretty much is it, Niles. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Andrew.
Yep.
I just want to comment real briefly. Again, thanking the committee. I thought they do fabulous work and had some really good suggestions, which is going to be wonderful to see them follow up. Niles, one thing I'd mentioned that Andrew offline in an admin chat was I'd love to connect with you on some of these things around platforms for communication. I know it's an important thing. Our community's talked about it, and it sounds like there's a couple real low-hanging fruit things that are available, like a WhatsApp versus perhaps some other types of platforms. And you had an amazing suggestion. There are even some groups out there that you could even, do a contract with, that they can send the messages. So I just want to acknowledge that and acknowledge, Niles, all that you do and all the thoughtful suggestions, and you being the glue behind all these meetings at night. We had, I think, 3 this week. It seemed maybe 7, and he's always there, supporting us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can't thank Niles enough. Every single. I was going to mention something just on the CEC. If this were just the pandemic and not a post-Delta, mid-Omicron situation, I would have said, let's try and do the outdoor area of La Ferme. That could have been a compromised location with good ventilation and all. But I really appreciate us trying to be safe rather than sorry. However frustrating it is, I'd love to have more community events, but maybe events at 18 degrees in an outdoor setting is not great either. But we'll get there and we'll figure this out, because I know so many people really enjoy them. So thank you. Here comes my favorite part. Madam Secretary, Katie, do you want to talk to us about the redesign of the newsletter?
Is the ethics committee going, or?
Oh, no, sorry.
Was there another update? I didn't.
No, I got an email today just saying that they have their meeting on Tuesday. Their next meeting is Tuesday, and that was their main update, was that there would be a meeting on Tuesday, and that they didn't have anything to report. So sorry,
And
I forgot to
Katie,
mention that.
Yeah. And Katie, as you jump in, I just wanted to reaffirm Andrew's recommendation, because I'm not sure how many people, there's so many things and declarations these days, but the state of Maryland is actually under an emergency declaration because of the number of hospitalizations and the capacity of the ER emergency rooms. It's been a 30-day since early January, so we're still under that state of emergency. So just recognizing that hasn't been lifted, and so really I think we all wish we could do something, and if it were outdoors or part of it, but it's just prudent to wait a little bit longer and see where we go. So thanks.
Hold on, Katie. George has put his.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That's an election committee update. George.
Yeah. I think all the details were kind of covered at the meeting earlier this week. I just wanted to announce again for everyone, if there's anyone on the call who is not already aware of it, the draft plan that was introduced by the council at their last meeting is currently on the election committee website up through, I think it's February 10th. We're encouraging residents who have comments to send those comments to the election committee. It's the committee inbox. It's vmaelections@martinseditions.org. At that point, the committee will aggregate all those comments and make sure they're shared with the council well in advance of their February meeting, so that way they have a chance to look at all those comments. But I just wanted to put in a plug that the draft plan is up on the election committee website now, and we are encouraging residents who have comments to share those comments with us at that time.
Great. Thank you, George. All right, Katie, drum roll. Let's go.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for the floor. I promise it's going to get interactive too. So everyone, you're encouraged to participate. So as you may recall, in past council meetings, I have asked to take the lead and looking at ways we might update or improve our existing means of community reporting. I have professional experience in the field of communications, and I feel this is a fitting task as the village secretary. So therefore, tonight I will be proposing a new look for the Village of Martin's Editions monthly newsletter, a redesign that will continue to include all the reporting requirements to date, but allow room for added features, for example, a historical project, and eventually the addition of other features, like perhaps a welcome wagon section for new residents, a council-sponsored column that rotates monthly between council members, and more opportunities for community involvement, reporting, and announcements. So same name, same game, new look, okay? I have consulted current and former village staff like Jean Sperling. And with Niall's help, I will be sharing with you advanced knowledge of the template in just a bit, that what the potential redesign will be based off of. I want to stress it's a mock-up, not the actual newsletter just yet, because in true fashion, we are 11th hour journalists. So anyway, but if you can get a sense of what I'm proposing. And just, a few items I wanted to also stress. The newsletter will continue to be created in constant contact. This is an upgrade offered by the company. So a printable version is available, and the residents who already request the mailed printable versions of the newsletter will continue to do so. That won't change. The redesign is not intended to demand more time of the village staff, but rather just reposition the page to lend space to new features contributed by resident reporters and assembled by moi, okay? No extra work on them. But in order to move forward, we must understand our past. And I would like to emphasize that this is not the first time the VMA newsletter has tried a new look. In 2015, residents might have noticed a difference between the June and July issue that year and then that September's. I could drop the links in the chat if people would like to see the examples. Would that be helpful? Or? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there, so let me see, let me drop those in here, sorry. So let me get those up here. Bear with me. Wish we had some like Jeopardy music. I'm sorry. Hopefully this will work. Hold on. Okay, so these were, old copies here. Let me see. Everyone get that? Okay. They're PDFs. Should be able to open those up. All right. So this was the 2015 look. Some changes there. Okay. Here's another update. Just so you can see kind of the evolving here. Here's another one. That's 2015. Then in 2019, there was a new look. And a lot of times, with each new look, there was a new chair. So, Andrew, you're probably due for a new look, Not that your look isn't great already. I didn't want to say.
I was going to say, the new salon, the new stylist cannot really do any change to this.
I'm excited for this salon. Are you kidding me? Anyway, but, okay, and here's the last one. All right, so this is just to show everyone the 2015 newsletters, the 2019, and most recently what we've been looking at. And then to fast forward to our most recent issue. So let's talk about the inspiration for the newest feature that I'm proposing, which really was the idea of Naomi Nyerman, our resident, that she would like to refer to as the VMA Legacy Project, which would pair our younger residents and longtime residents for a series of stories and oral history to be shared with residents. Naomi Niles and I will be working to offer students SSL hours for their contributions to the project. And so, you're probably asking, or some of you out there, well, why do this? Well, why not? It's in our blood. It's in our bones. So Niles, now I would like to show, if you can pull it up on the shared screen, the Chevy Chase Historical Society links. You're all going to love this.
Yeah, hang on one second. I went too quickly, and so I did we'll get to this in a second. So let me go.
It's not template time yet.
No, I went a little bit too quickly, so just give me 1 second here. I will go.
In a few moments, you'll see on the screen that in the 1930s, neighborhood children produced the Thornapple Street News. And this is courtesy of Chevy Chase Historical Society, and Gene Sperling sent me the links. From 1931 to 1936, there were 12 copies produced of the Thornapple Street News. And as a way for, the kids to keep busy in the summer, which, hey, as parents, who doesn't love that? That just sounds wonderful. And this trend reappeared in the 70s with the Shepherd Street News. And there were 6 copies produced of that from 1972 to 1974. by Jimmy and Julie Johnson. And the Johnson children, coincidentally, used to live in Gene Sperling and Bill Catherwood's home. And so they came up with this idea of the newsletter while walking back from Doc's, which is what they used to call Brookfield Pharmacy. So, a little factoid for you there. And, to summarize why, this is a quote about these projects that's on the Chevy Chase Historical Society, and this really spoke to me. Neighborhood newspapers mirror the communities they serve. And when they are written and published by children, to be sure with some cooperation by parents, they have a special charm. And I say indeed, So in the next issue, you will see a story reported by a young resident reporter. She's 14 years old and a student at BCC High School. I know her quite well. She's one of the loves of my life. It happens to be my daughter, Hannah Howard. And without giving too much info away, Hannah interviewed a resident on Turner Lane who will have lived on Turner for 60 years this May. And she had beautiful stories to share. And so please check it out. Hannah is putting the finishing touches on the story this weekend. She was mentored by a resident and former reporter, Nancy Ferris. She's a little nervous, so am I, so please be kind. And looking ahead, Naomi is already on it. She already has an idea for another legacy project story in March. And as for the preservation part of it, I thought we might look at storing the long form of these stories or audio under the tab or About tab on the website, which has a history of the village section anyway, and you can find that on the website. So just some ideas, but that's more long-term. So let's talk about the potential redesign. Okay. So again, there's not an actual newsletter yet. This is just a proposed template. It's going to still have the regular features, such as the letter from the chair, upcoming events, spotlight, notes from the village office, building blocks. All that will be included, but there's going to be some new navigation. So it might take some getting used to. Apologies in advance. But, in closing, and if no one likes this new look, we can always change and go back to the old one. But the residents could see this as soon as January 31st when the February newsletter is distributed. And so therefore, I would like to make a motion to redesign the Martin's Edition Village newsletter to allow for added features.
I'll second that.
Third.
The motion.
Well, thank you. Well, since we have the motion and that was successful, I would like the residents on the call to take an opportunity. I want to ask your feedback for the name of this new section, or as we call it, the slug. So I'm going to drop it into the chat, and please let me know your thoughts. And, we could call it Village Vignettes, Historical Record, Resident Record, or come up with a new name. You let me know. I'm probably tapped out at this point. But I'd love your feedback, and I hope you will like the new look. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Katie. I just want to say real briefly that I so appreciate what Naomi and you are doing on this legacy project. If it hadn't been for me and my family living across the street from the late Frank Carell, I would never have known his story. And maybe there was something written about it in the past before we moved here 10 years ago. But it so happened that we had very common background. And we lived in the same place as kids, same faith, and same second language or first language. And so I think these are just wonderful opportunities to hear from amazing residents who had incredible life experiences and careers and have so much to share. So I think this is probably one of my favorite things that's going on right now in the village. I think it's just really, really wonderful. So thank you to you and Naomi for this.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for sharing that. That's what I'm talking about. That's wonderful. And, our next student, who wouldn't benefit learning from Frank's experience? So we could, interview Hannah and, again, I just think there's nothing but positivity here and knowledge. So if I can do a small part, I'm happy to help.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Okay, so we're moving to Arthur. I don't know if there was anything else to say on since you spoke briefly, but maybe there are additional items on the committee guidelines you want to share.
No, I said it all before. I just invite everybody to take a look at the packet we will be sending out individually, or somehow make it the document, the guidelines available as a document by itself. So stand by for a forum to discuss this in the next several weeks.
And Arthur, if I could just yield maybe 30 seconds, Andrew, if that's okay. I wanted to just comment real briefly, if you're good with that.
Sure.
Awesome. So again, first of all, I just want to acknowledge again, I said it before, but it can't be said enough. It's just Arthur's leadership on this, and I think we're really have a place of a tremendous baseline. One thing I'm going to do, Niles, I know I said this earlier, I'm just going to share my screen really briefly. Literally, I'll try and do this in 60 seconds or less.
Yeah. It should allow you to. So hang on. Okay. I'm going to close out of that and stop sharing.
Patience. We'll make
there
this
we go.
Quick. Perfect. So I'm going to just flash two things. Sure. Okay, we'll start with this. This wasn't the first thing, but I just wanted to put this up again. I just see black, so I don't know if I'm the only one. If that's it, that's fine. But
it's all black. I don't see anything.
Yeah, all black. It
says I'm viewing Jeffrey Blander's screen that happens to be all black.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try that once more, and if it doesn't work, we will just verbally do this. How's that? Okay, let's try this once more. Anything there? Is it still black?
It's still black.
All right. We are not going to share screen then. I'll just mention very briefly. So I see Ron Bolt, you're here, and you're always a gentleman and the most impeccably dressed here. I hope I'm not offending anyone, but truly, and you're magnificent. So I just want to share that, again, I'm thinking about the idea of learning moments, teaching moments, and there was some really great information you had shared last year during the process of while we were going through the ethics ordinance. And the reason why I thought it's good to mention it here is, as we recall, there was a part of that also interfaced with the committees. And so again, I think even though we had heard that this was in good faith around certain things, I think we also heard some ways that we can improve the process. So I was just going to share that, as part of this final review that we're going to do and this discussion, I was going to perhaps bring in some language there that Ron had offered that just gives clarity on how some of these nuances, so that as going forward, we don't necessarily have to repeat some of the things that we went through. And then again, same thing here. I think there are some nuances around working with perhaps the liaison and also our village manager, just we can be very clear and specific about voting and procedures. And that isn't to discount what Susan Kahn had said in her very eloquent statement. It's just the idea that I think, again, in good faith, perhaps last year, this year, folks did it the way they felt was the right way they did it. And under a litmus test of this, is this legal or are we doing it right? Of course, it's all fits within the guidelines. But I think as part of what Arthur has put together, if we just put a couple tweaks around these areas, it's there, it's codified, and perhaps we'll have other bumps down the road, but perhaps at least we can avoid the ones we just went through. So with that said, again, acknowledging Arthur, everything he's done, the impeccably dressed and always prepared Ron Bolt, and with that, I am going to hand it back over to Andrew. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. And thank you, Ron, for always showing up in a suit and tie. Not necessary. Maybe for other meetings you have before or after. Probably not after. Hopefully not after. Okay. Treasurer's reports.
Okay, that's me again. The Treasury report is simple. It's in the package. I wanted to bring up one other issue that's not in the report that came up after I sent it in. A resident has suggested, actually she suggested it last year as well, that since the village has a large amount of money in the bank that is unallocated, that we consider giving rebates to the residents. Section 5 does that. Ron, here is where we're going to call on you. There has been questions about whether that's actually legal or not. And there, if we ever decided to do that, there would be all kinds of questions about how you would do it, how you would allocate it. Let me just give you a few things to think about, and for residents to think about. Is it by, in Section 5, they do it as a rebate to the property tax. Since we pay virtually no property tax in Martin's Addition, I'm not sure that that would be a good idea. Most of our money comes from the income tax, but do we give money back according to people's tax returns? Do we do it by resident? Do we do it by household? Do we do it by individual? Let me just give you one number and then we can move on. There are roughly 1,000 people in Martin's Addition altogether. There's roughly $1.5 million excess unallocated in the bank. If that were to be distributed per capita, it would be $1,500 in everybody's bank account from this one-time distribution. There would be other ways possibly of doing it if we wanted to do it at all. So it has been an issue that has been suggested. I'm not sure that I support it, but I will put it forward and I'd like to get other people's views. So think about it. No, we don't have to come to any kind of a resolution today. Think about it and let's hear your views. That's it.
Okay, if we can do that during the resident section, I'll call on you, Susan Post. If you have a little patience, just so we can get through the rest of the agenda, and then we can have residents speak on this right now if they have immediate opinions. Go to the manager's report.
Right. So this will be quick, just because we talked about some of this before. As we talked about before, the traffic group is going to do some initial preparations on improvements, going through the village and having an initial review about speed bumps and all those kind of stuff. And we'll have more information next week. The American Rescue Plan funds, we're going forward with evaluating Taylor Street as part of evaluating drainage on Brookville Road to try to get the state and the county to work on improvements there. And this is an American Rescue Plan fund potential use. And then the other managers have been talking about this sort of shared position. Right now, I've floated an idea of using our accounting firm to sort of do the legwork of evaluating uses, helping with the reporting, that kind of thing, to do it that way, and to talk to the other communities about that as well. So I'm gonna meet with some of my fellow managers next week about that proposal, about an idea that I've floated out about how to do that. And then lastly, there was a couple of residents who talked about snow removal, and this is something that the Public Safety Task Force is talking about. Obviously, with the recent snow and things, we've had various residents express concerns about sidewalks and also just in general how we do snow removal. Right now, the intent of it is to try to get the roads as free and as clear as possible. There's a question of, how precise you want to make those things, and there's some cost involved in doing things just as we do it now with the trucks, or if we want to use bobcats or various things to get more precise in clearing snow. But the other thing was sidewalk shoveling. Now, as Arthur contributed some background data in my own conversations with Tucker from Rolling Acres and Matt Trollinger in Somerset, who they do snow shoveling, the cost is roughly about double what you're spending on just the snow removal of the streets. So therefore, just as a ballpark, for example, in Somerset, they spent, from the first snowfall, they spent about $30,000 all told, clearing it out. About $18,000 of it was doing the sidewalk shoveling. So about half of what they spent was doing sidewalk shoveling. So that's sort of typical of what we would be looking at. So it'd be about double what we cost. So for the first one in early January, it was about $6,000 to do the snow removal for the village. So doing the sidewalks, a rough floor for it would be probably about $12,000 to do a storm of that type. This is very rough estimates. I'm not trying to give exact numbers here, but just trying to give people ballparks of the idea of what you're potentially doing that. So I just want to put that out there.
Would they be coming through over and over again during a storm like the vehicles do, or would it be a one-time shovel of the sidewalk?
So that depends. There's various issues with that. One is there's a question of how much we want to, when in the storm we want to do the snow shoveling, when are we coming through. I think from my conversations with Tucker, it was more about potentially doing it towards the end of a storm, because then we have maximum accumulation, so we're clearing it out, because what we don't want to do is dig out and then clear again, especially considering, this is going to show my sort of Midwestern bias here, but the snow is never that deep here, and people tend to stay in their homes during snowstorms. Unlike where I grew up in North Dakota, where we would go out in all kinds of weather. So I think the idea of doing it once towards the end of the storm fits with how people tend to behave during storms. So that was sort of my thought, but we could look at going through it several times. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I have various, and I know others have other opinions as well, but you know, I've been basically told to cease and desist on one of the sidewalks I shovel for an elderly neighbor because they hired one of the kids. That Gene shared a consolidated list of all the kids that were willing to make a buck. I don't want to stand in the way of that. Having said that, we have elderly residents on fixed incomes that really don't want to spend the $20, $40, $60 or however much it costs to pay a kid. And also, I mean, in my opinion, most of us try to hunker down, but what if there's an emergency? That's why I mean, first thing I do is I try to clean that neighbor's car and shovel the sidewalk just in case there's an emergency during the storm. Anyway, it's a great discussion to have, and we can think about it, and the funds and all that. And maybe there's an opportunity for residents to reach out and ask for that help, where we say, all right, maybe for those residents, we can provide it as a service that this village has provided.
I would say, as one elderly resident who can't wait to get out and shovel his own sidewalk and all his neighbors, I don't want that opportunity taken away from me. So, yeah, I think it's something that is demand determined rather than do it for everybody.
Yeah, maybe that's a way to do it. But we can have more time to discuss this. We'll have a couple more months of opportunity here for snow, so maybe we shouldn't sit on it and wait this one out. But anyway, no, sorry for interrupting.
No. That was all I really had. For now, if there's any questions, let me know. But I just wanted to make it brief since we've had various meetings this week and more next week, so we can sort of take those more in detail.
All right. Thank you. So I'm going to go to Susan Post, who had raised her hand.
I just asked her to unmute, so.
Okay. I have some thoughts about what you can do with excess money. And I know that a couple of people in the village met with a couple of people from Chevy Chase at Home, right? Which is our local aging in place village. And I'm part of that and on the board and membership chair and stuff. So I'm very invested in it. One thing that might be good to think about is, and particularly I'm thinking of the person who just a little while ago talked about how on their block they have a lot of people with disabilities and illnesses and et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there are people in our neighborhood who would benefit from the services that Chevy Chase at Home can provide to members, which includes things like transportation to doctors and physical therapy and other things like that. But not everybody can afford to be a member. It can be kind of expensive. It's $600 for a couple and $450 for an individual to be at the membership level where you can receive volunteer assistance.
Is this an annual or per month, Susan?
Annual. But it's not pennies. So I don't know whether we might like to establish a scholarship or two for people. If Niles or anyone else has knowledge of someone who might be greatly assisted by becoming a member, but who might not be able to afford it. The other thing is that some of the governmental localities, like the town of Chevy Chase, have made grants to Chevy Chase at Home. Like the town of Chevy Chase, I think, gives them $5,000 a year just to support the services that they provide to people in their neighborhood. And that's another thing that might be considered. I know there are all sorts of legalities around making donations to other nonprofits and something. Perhaps Ron would know more about that. But just suggesting that there are ways to financially support Chevy Chase at Home, as well as to just let people know that they can be volunteers, and that they can join themselves as members or associate members, etc. Throwing that out as an option for all.
Interesting possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, resident comments continued. I see Marty's hand is up. Then we can go to Susan and Larry. I don't know if that's a new hand, old hand, but let's go in that order.
I'm on. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I want to start by saying thank you for an extremely productive and cordial meeting tonight. This has really been a pleasure. And Andrew, I give you a lot of the credit and all the council for letting people talk and discuss topics as they come up. I think you get a lot of good feedback, and it's a really good conversation. So just kudos for tonight's meeting as well. 2 questions for Niles. Back in November, a small group of residents put together kind of a fast action proposal for the council about things like, getting the speed humps on Thornapple and other streets where they're much needed. And I'm glad that's proceeding. I'll be at the meeting when you talk about that. But we also included in that short note, in the fast action plan, painting the crosswalks and getting those mobile signs where you could put in front of a stop sign, like 50 people, that show people's speed. So somebody's coming down this hill on Thornapple at 35, 40 miles an hour. It would flash 40 miles an hour, and before they get to the stop sign at Chestnut Street. And that would be mobile, so you could put it on Cummings and every place is needed. So I'm wondering, where are those other 2 things? I know in the snow, you can't paint the crosswalks in February, but is that something that is going to be on the agenda for very early spring? I'm painting the crosswalks. And can we get the sign, a mobile sign, or even 2? Have a couple of them, put them up, because you can move them. Then you can use speed reduction methods at various stop signs that need it. So where are those 2 pieces of that fast action plan?
So for ABVers and all of that stuff, I have a list of tasks that they're going to be doing in the spring, and some of that involves the crosswalk, some of that involves correcting a few things in the sidewalk and things like that I've noticed going through and doing an evaluation of that. So that will be in the spring, and I'm going to have a conversation on that. In regards to the signs, actually, we had a conversation as part of the traffic group conversation. The contractor for traffic group, did offer to set up his signs that he has. So we'll be doing that relatively soon as part of one of the first tasks in planning out what the improvements to the village would be. So that's more to come on that, but that's basically where we're at.
In fact, Marty, I was at that meeting with them. They have these signs, and the signs apparently also have traffic counting devices within the sign itself. And what they can do is have one period of time where they are not flashing your speed and look at what your speed is, and then activate the sign with your speed. And we can tell from that how much impact that does have on traffic. And so we will be having more conversations with them next week. But that was one preliminary idea of using the signs with and without the flashing speeds to see how much impact it has. So we are moving forward on that.
I just want to thank you both, Arthur and Niles, for moving on that, because that's real important. And it really makes a difference in our life. I mean, 1 kid, 1 car, and it's just a tragedy. So thank you so much. Godspeed. Thank you. Do it as soon as it thaws. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Susan.
Hi, I was going to say, Arthur, when you're coming up with the committee guidelines and such, when there are disputes and conflicts, some HOAs and other agencies that are in Montgomery County commonly use the services of free conflict resolution, and it might not be a bad idea to have some sort of recommended guideline because as far as I can see within our village, when there are conflicts or disputes, all that I've heard about is the ethics committee, which kind of raises it to a very oppositional kind of contentious level that can actually go against direct communication. So sometimes I know there's mediation of conflicts in the workplace, in nonprofits and government agencies that I've dealt with, from 2 people to 30, and there could be a sentence like, if members of a committee, I was starting to write one, if members of a committee experience conflict or disputes, we encourage the use of alternative dispute resolution services, including free mediation by the Conflict Resolution Center of Montgomery County, or free mediation services by groups such as that, or the services of paid mediators, paid or private mediators and dispute resolution professionals, which could be either paid dispute resolution professionals or lawyers. It doesn't have to be a lawyer. So anyway, there's just so many ways to deal with disputes and conflicts that I think could assist our community in particular, because when there is not direct communication, they just can fester for the longest time. And people really are accustomed to going in and helping people in a confidential, neutral, voluntary way to deal with these either staff issues or conflicts within committees. And anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And I'm not sure if are you saying something, Arthur? Do you want to change your mic?
Oh, Arthur's
just give me 1 second. There we go.
It looked like he was trying to.
There we go.
Okay. Susan, send me an email on that so I'll have a record of it.
Okay.
And then I'll have it there in front of me when I'm doing revisions.
Okay. And I wanted to, thank you. I wanted to also thank Andrew and Katie for what you all said about how, you wish things could have been different. We can all agree that the meeting sucked last time. I really appreciated your response. And Andrew, I very much appreciated your giving me time to say my little spiel. I really didn't want to have to say half of it at the beginning and half of it at the end and save another half for another meeting. So it was really wonderful. I really appreciate your defending freedom of speech here. We were talking about extra money that's being spent. I still believe that it could be valuable for our village to get technical expertise, legal expertise with telecom background to help us think out or help us keep abreast of what's happening with the ZTA 1907 since that has passed, and even to consider talking to the owner of the buildings on Brookville Road, because he's independent of whatever we do. I mean, he is an independent commercial provider, can do things that are a little different. And it might just be useful to know what might happen, what our alternatives are, and maybe we could, anyway, it just could be helpful. And that does cost money to get that expertise and if we have a lot of money, it could be useful to get more background there. And I know, that would be Ron talking to the other people, this kind of fellow giving a presentation to you all on the council and such. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Susan. And Larry, before I go to you, and I think you will be our last resident to comment. Susan, while you were on, I was thinking also the 5G issue with the headlines on the airports. I don't know, you've probably followed that. It reminded me that we did commit to having a forum on this issue at some point, or some kind of discussion, and maybe we just add it to an upcoming council meeting, but it's still on my mind, and I know it's on a lot of residents' minds. So we can continue that conversation as well. All right. Last but not least, Larry, please.
Okay. So many months ago, we brought up. In fact, it was the one of the platforms I was running on is that the purpose of this government taking on an incorporation was the safety of the members of the village. And there were a whole list of things that were the actual governing of this safety. That is, what are we doing about our fire hydrants that are at this point totally unreliable? What are we doing about leaking, failing gas lines that are actually pouring water into people's furnaces? What are we doing about car thefts and thefts off of porches and sheds? What are we doing about vandalism, speeding, flooding, and lighting? These are all the basic safety issues that make this a good village. And they're not being expeditiously addressed and dealt with. It's not that somebody's a bad person. There's no thing there. But we came up with the idea, perhaps we could hire an expediter, a person who could take each of these things, like the hydrants, and we might light out, Arthur's really good at this, but others can do it as well, what we want to have accomplished in a 90-day period. And let that person, now let's see, I know we're cash strapped. We're only down to what, 4 million now? So what's the problem? Why wouldn't we do such a thing? And get the basic function of this government to provide for the best safety of our citizens, to get that done. It's just going on, not being done. And it's really kind of upsetting. So that's my cheerful way of ending the meeting. Sorry.
Thank you, Larry. I mean, I don't know if anyone wants to respond. I know that we're looking at a lot of those issues. You know, the traffic safety, pedestrian safety being one of the most urgent ones, and having this forum next week just to have other residents be able to provide their feedback without just putting the bump there. We got plenty of feedback saying we'd like to have a discussion about that, and we're including folks from Section 5. But point well taken, and we'll continue these conversations. I think we're done here, though. Jeff, I see your hand. If anyone on the council still wants to say something, and then we'll adjourn.
I'll make this super quick. First of all, Arthur, thank you for entertaining the suggestions and sharing. And one thing I just put out there again, with all the tremendous work that Katie's been doing, you know, we could perhaps consider, are there any platforms there that could enhance what she's doing? But also, I know we rely on volunteers, but if there's an intern out there, you know, and we can do it in a way that fits our code and the legalities, perhaps there could be a little bit of budget there that she could bring someone on. I'd love to see that. The other thing I just wanted to state, Andrew and other members, I see Lori Mitchell there. I don't know if she's listening, but I remember obviously last year there was tension, and that's understated, when the ethics ordinance was being created by the committee. And at the end of that, I shared a note to everyone on the committee. Mark Efferon was the chair at the time, and I had created a draft of a code of conduct, which I will share, which gets to some of that language and, you know, just what are the basic sort of etiquettes of meetings and things. And it was short, sweet, but I'll pass that on to Arthur just so we don't have to start from scratch. And then finally, as folks see, you know, in the background, I've got the barber shop up there, and I do want to just end on that note of wishing my heartfelt, and we all do, to John and his wife, without tearing up. I love them dearly. The haircut you see here is I received from him, is the last haircut. I made our dinner tonight before this meeting with John's olive oil. And, you know, we have a glass of wine, you know, still there. So again, it's, I'm going to stop here because my words will fail me, but I just want to appreciate you, Andrew, in passing over. And I love them dearly, and it's hard to imagine not seeing them there. But the legacy that we'll have perhaps another shop there. But I just want to thank you, and I know everyone feels the same way, and maybe we'll have a write-up in Katie's newsletter. So God bless all.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate that.
Oh.
Katie, did you want
to? Sorry. Hold on.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Can we send a card or flowers or something to John from the council?
For sure. I mean, absolutely. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll talk to Niles about it, and we can facilitate that 100%. And family, I don't know if you had children or
Yeah, yes, they do. I actually met at least one of the children the other day. So yes, we'll figure that out.
I don't know if we got a home address for him, but we could find
Mm-hmm.
it. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move to adjourn.
There's a second?
Yeah.
Susan?
Second, and Susan Fettig.
Ayes?
Aye. There's 2 hands up from Jeff Blank.
Okay.
All
You
right.
only count for
Just
one,
everybody,
but
we're
all your hands.
adjourning as of 9:22 p.m. Thank you.
Good. Thank you all.
In the meeting for all. So don't worry about it. You don't have to do anything.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.